study goes into more in depth instead of trying to spend that money up front and looking at a bunch of different options and financial feasibility of a bunch of different options. So any thoughts on that? Or is everybody okay with that really kind of substance change? Okay. Thanks. And just make sure we got that on the same page with that. So
yeah, and that's more or less it. I think as for the timing and the process, we added a little more sort of background language. So the scope is more or less in its final draft form. And we're just working with MNC PPC and our own procurement to do that. I think hopefully within the next month, the task order will go out to the bench of consultants. And once we officially enter that contract, we'll send around the list of consultants. I know that was a request, so we can do that as well. But we're going to try to move pretty quickly because they already have these consultants on their bench. Once we decide on one, it should move pretty quickly. So at least a month, 2 weeks to maybe put out a task order, 2 weeks to get responses, 2 to 3 weeks to review and select, and then enter into a contract with a consultant, and then hopefully give them maybe about 6 months or so to complete the study. So between January to June is probably when they would be working on it.
when we're working on. Okay. The funding for this, once we get into the final RFPs, does that have to go to council? Do we have to present a request to council?
We will, yes.
Yeah.
We'll have to make a request to council for.
Okay. All right. Any questions on the RFP process or anything? Sounds like a reasonable timeline. Is anybody, I think that, so we're looking at probably June. I know the council originally wanted us to try and issue a full report next year, isn't that right?
Yeah, but I thought we had talked about maybe moving away from that. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to give them, a briefing at some point and extend that calendar a little bit. Okay, all right, good deal. What was my other question on that? I think you covered everything. The funding piece we'll have to figure out. Piece. Oh, that was the other one. Was anything else on the cricket group? I know that came up in the discussion. I know we got one communication, but I haven't heard anything else. Is anything happening behind the scenes on that?
No, we've been, obviously we were connected. We want to set up our own meeting for our purposes with the task force. And then I think they were interested in maybe meeting with council members, but that hasn't moved forward in terms of scheduling. Yeah, I can follow up, but okay. Presumably they're just busy doing things. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we were, staying on top of that while we got it. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question of just clarification? This is Tom Cove on the, just kind of went over quickly, the funding count. You have to go to council for funding for the fees for the consultant.
Yes.
Is that a pro forma thing, or is that likely to be a discussion? And do they have to find money? Just feels like we're pretty much basing everything on this consultant. And if they decide they don't want to fund it, that kind of goofs it up. I don't know anything about it. I'm just kind of wondering, is that just an automatic?
No, it's definitely not an automatic. I don't think the dollar amount is huge, but it's a good question. I mean, we're going to have to go through it. I mean, we were told, and we know that there haven't been as many supplemental appropriations this year because we're pretty close to our reserves. That we're also only talking about maybe $150,000. It's not a done. I think we have to maybe have a contingency plan probably. But the full council did support this. So from that end, it's not really a debate about whether the study is worthy. But we haven't officially asked that question. So
yeah, Tom, what I'll do is, I think that's a great question. I think what I'll do is I'll kind of reach out and kind of maybe do some background checking on this to make sure. I know that since, as Bilal said, it was fully supported by the council. And it came out of the Econ and ENC. So it came out of 2 committees and it was fully supported. So and in the early conversations, they're aware the funding request is coming. But to your point, I think it'd be good to do some legwork on that to make sure they're aware of what's coming and that we don't have any issues.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So today what I wanted to do was kind of as we get rolling with the study, that is one part of what we are tasked with in getting through. So we kind of got that ball rolling. Then I wanted to dive into 2 of the other topics that we had and kind of throw it out there to the group to see if we can figure out a game plan on how to address these. The first one being, workforce development. So a discussion on the task force will address the requirement to identify workforce development needs related to sports tourism industry in the county. So this is one of the tasks that we're assigned with, and one of the tasks we got to handle. The goal is not to address that today. The goal was to try and figure out how are we going to address that? And kind of, we've got a report and a study going on the one end. How are we going to handle this task as a committee? Do we want to form a subcommittee to try and work on this? Is it something that we just want to handle as a group, as a whole? And what are the key components to that? I would say is some of the opening thoughts. Any feedback or suggestions on that?
I mean, in my opinion, I would say as a whole, the group as a whole, just because we have a very diverse group here, so everyone's going to come at it from a very different angle.
Okay.
And I think that's important for the workforce side of it, because there is so many components, whether it's recreational staff to hotels to landscaping to everything in between, that will all have a different set of eyes on it that will help kind of drive that discussion.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that full task force versus committee?
Totally agree with Matt for the same reasons.
Makes sense. So any other thoughts on that before I kind of continue down? So the next piece of that is, based on what we have to do, and the requirement to identify workforce development needs related to sports tourism in the county, I guess the other piece would be to start framing what does that look like and what components of that do we need? I know, and what I mean by that is, I know one of the discussions at the first meeting we had was WorkSource Montgomery. Is that somebody we need to bring in and kind of talk to? It's Anthony, I believe, right? Anthony Fresno.
Yes.
Do we want to bring Anthony in and have a discussion? Maybe I'll back up from that and ask the group, what parts of this, what does that look like and what we're delivering? Maybe we'll start there.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts on this. So first, there's several tiers and aspects of this. So one of the things in other areas, which I think is similar, so if we start out somebody even who's entry level seasonal, one of the things that's important in this county is that they have a pathway to a career. So whether it's making it to the midpoint or getting maybe a degree in the field where they have a pathway to go somewhere. So I think, what are the stages in that pathway? What do we currently have? And I think already, when you look at universities who have degree programs in the area, they're generally park, recreation, tourism. So everything that we all do is kind of lumped together, and then you could typically specialize, some different. A lot of the Carolina schools right now have that degree program. Maryland does not have one anymore. Frostburg has one. I think Shepherd in West Virginia has one. But huge in Carolina, Penn State, Texas A&M. And so letting folks know we need to be a big recruiter of that. I know it's one of the problems that I have. I'm sure we all have in the industry, is getting quality staff coming here to Montgomery County to take jobs at varying levels. But going, okay, this is what a pathway in this career field looks like. You can go in many avenues, but at the end of the day, what does that look like? And how are we an attractive recruiter here in Montgomery County and helping folks along that pathway? So I do think WorkSource Montgomery certainly has some connection in that.
Mm-hmm. Do we have programs, Jeff, is there anything to high school right now that related to this? I know we have a lot of specialized different programs and things of that nature that run through the high schools. Is there anything related to this at all in the high schools?
We have something with our athletic trainers right now, a formal internship program that we've established with the sports medicine program. When we brought the athletic trainers in as employees last year, midway through the year, we launched a student internship program. So there is a framework here that we could build out in other aspects of sports tourism, other fields, where we can use the playbook, if you will, for that program to apply to other things, and certainly work with everyone in this group and your entities to build that out through schools. That program has been in place since last January. We have students at most of the schools working under the direction of the athletic trainer. It's gone very well. So there's some things we can learn and certainly build out and modify based on the needs.
MCPS and Montgomery College also has a hospitality program.
Right.
I think it's primarily focused on the food and beverage piece of that right now, but this could be something that, you know, possibly in the future that could have an extension.
Well, I mean, that alone.
Curriculum down the line.
Because the restaurants support events.
Right.
So you can, I think that's one of the things. I completely agree with what you're saying about the pathway, but I think there's not gonna be one solution to this.
No.
Cause like the hospitality is gonna be very different than, you know, sports professionals versus landscaping and parks and rec type side of things. So I don't think we're gonna have one solution. So
Correct.
Workforce Montgomery will help in one piece, but not in other pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things, just common areas, I'm just looking at the Clemson website right now. Parks, recreation and tourism management. So they get into things like, you know, colleges, universities get into things like athletic administration. They get into things like some of their turf programs are related to that. They get into things like recreational therapy, tourism, travel, hospitality management. So I think one of the things that we could do is take some of these degree programs and look at their sub areas. You could, lots of folks, they'll do everything from internships with like the local minor league baseball club to serving as to Jeff's point, I just drew a blank, athletic trainers to to golf course management, to all kinds of aspects of it. One of the things as an industry that we talk about is in the field is that young people aren't aware that this is a really great opportunity for a career path. And so I happen to sit on another committee with folks from Clemson, might be some folks from NC State and some folks from around the country. It's the group from the Academy of Park and Recreation Administration. They do a lot of the research in the field. And that's one of the things that they're talking about is as one of the most concerning issues in the industry is that young people aren't aware of the career pathway and the possibilities. And so, and it's at varying levels.
Darren, does Parks have anything at all currently in place?
Gotta unmute here. We do not. We hire a lot of seasonals and some of them, filter up the chain. I was thinking that a lot of our staff are right now at the NRPA conference, the National Parks and Rec Association conference in Atlanta. And of course, there's the MRPA conference here locally. And I think those could be opportunities to there's for example, there's an operations university program that's run through MRPA that we're very active in, where we kind of, I don't know, I think maybe we co-created some of the curriculum in that. I'll put university in quotes, but it's like a course. And so there are training things that I think we could probably, tap into a little bit more.
Yeah, Darren, to your point, they have a RecU as well, Recreation University, which is to try to help people emerging into the field, like seasonals transition to like a career position, like entry-level career position, and sort of give a foundation for folks who are entering into the field. And there's always room to expand the curriculum that's being taught, within the association. And so there's certainly opportunity there.
We have an apprentice program for our ground staff to learn turf management.
Right.
That's already in place.
And there's a question, I guess, between like professional development, which I think is what Matt and I were talking about, and then workforce development, which I guess might include folks that aren't currently in the field. Then how do you bring them?
Well, ours is actually probably more workforce because the people that came in our apprentice program had no sports turf management whatsoever. One used to be an
Right.
athletic trainer. So we literally took them from scratch to, fully operating in the system.
Similar to what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's similar to our seasons too, right? But
Yeah, you're kind of developing them from within and giving them.
they're
a
in the
track.
system, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm certainly passionate about this topic, but I think one of the things connecting to Jeff, and we started to do it on some level with student internships in other areas. We have a youth workforce program called TeenWorks. But where can we, I know you can't change school curriculum very easily, but like with the internship program, where can we start to, I think the really biggest thing here is education about the field and that there's a pathway and a great career opportunity. So where are places that we can, like we can do that as a committee?
But
I'll just, go ahead, Tom, sorry.
No, go ahead, Jeff. I'll go after you.
Yeah, I just wanted to, elevate, I think to Matt's point, things are going to look different in different spaces. We just launched a student led broadcast program this fall. They did their first broadcast at Damascus High School, a couple weeks of a football game. They're going to be broadcasting next Tuesday. So it's in partnership with MCPS TV and our county cable. So we'll be putting those broadcasts on, which is pretty cool that, again, highlighting the media aspect of it. We have an interest of expanding that to social media and the marketing. But that looks different than what I described a few minutes ago about sports medicine. So just in the MCPS world. So there's varying opportunities for us with this in terms of the school system. I also wanted to elevate conversations that we've had with Montgomery Rec about officiating, right? So there's so many aspects of this and opportunities of how we've worked with some of the associations. I'll take softball for one that we use umpires for. And now we had the umpire commissioner come speak with students, picked up about, half dozen or so students that worked throughout the summer as, rec umpires. And we're hoping to build that pipeline for sports officials. So we could talk about this. I mean, there's the opportunities are endless here.
Hey,
Yeah.
it's Susan.
hi, Susan, what's happening at Montgomery College?
Well, we have a variety of disciplines and programs. I think for us, we'd want to hear more sort of specifically what we're thinking about the types of jobs that need to be filled. I mean, I hear it anecdotally in this conversation, and that's really helpful. We offer a wide array of health sciences programs. So, we certainly create physical therapy assistants. Those aren't the same thing as an athletic trainer, but we can probably think about, are we putting people on the pathway to be athletic trainers? And if not, how do we change that? Because I know the demand for that has grown exponentially. One, from having kids who played sports for MCPS, and one who's now fully employed. I have a daughter who's fully employed as an athletic trainer. So, and then I think, about landscape and turf. We have a variety of programs that sort of fit that space. From what I know, I'd have to go talk to my colleagues and get more deeper with them and understand what we offer. And if it's not sufficient, what do we need to tweak? And are there sufficient jobs? Part of our challenge is it a program that we would offer and fill seats in, and there'd be enough students to take advantage of that because there's enough jobs to take advantage of that? Or would it be something where we'd partner with a department or agency to help them, with their either workforce or professional development goals, right? We certainly do that as well, thinking about something where you'd run a class of a certain number of people once a year in partnership with an entity who needs those particular jobs filled. And it's not something we would run permanently and add to the courses and disciplines available at the college. So there's a wide variety of ways that we could be helpful and respond. And then I think we would want to think about, what are the transfer opportunities? Because an athletic trainer, for example, is a master's degree at a minimum these days. So, where's Shady Grove? Are there transfer opportunities? If we create an open program that we add to the disciplines that we offer, are there nearby transfer opportunities? I think University of Maryland has some programs in that space, and UNES have some programs in that space. So is there something here in Montgomery County that we could run? So I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and we're happy at the college to sort of explore it more deeply and think about, are there 5 jobs in the county, or is it hundreds of jobs in the county? And then you can better figure out how to respond to those particular needs.
Bob, I know you wanted to say something as well.
Yeah, I was, here's my question, maybe framing point that, it goes back to the conversation that I think we're gonna have every meeting, which is sports tourism versus overall sports recreation, health, wellness. As I read the council resolution, it was identify workforce development needs related to the sports tourism industry. So my sense is that, and I know Adrian can wax poetic, and Jeff is on the recreation profession, and Jeff as well. And when we look at the future of sports in this country, we're really looking at upgrading coaches, upgrading officials, providing better athletic trainers and highly trained quality trainers, et cetera. Those are fundamental to the future of sports in this country. But I'm not quite sure how they relate to tourism versus heads and beds versus the ability to create businesses around that, people in the sales and marketing fields. So I just throw that out there. I lean frankly towards the other one, which is a broader one, but I feel the discussion creeping into the overall career opportunities in the sports and recreation field. And I just put it out there for our group to understand if that's what we want to do, good, but it does feel a little bit drift from sports tourism, which is a different set of needs and talents.
I'll let Matt
Yeah.
jump on this one.
Tom, as I live in the space, I actually think this is the one spot where the broad approach is appropriate. So for us to run a tournament at the Soccerplex, I need groundskeepers, even though they're here all the time, in order to make sure our fields are ready. I need athletic trainers, which are in desperate need. I need officials, which are in desperate need. I need housekeepers at the hotels. I need servers at the restaurants. I need all that in order to make sure that the people, when they get here, can do everything else that's around that tournament. So I think the broad approach is actually appropriate for this one.
And then,
Good answer.
yeah, and Tom, I appreciate you raising that, and keeping us grounded, because I think, that part of the conversation is needs to keep being addressed. And I agree with Matt, is that when you look at any of these big events going on, it's kind of everybody coming together. And what I've heard in the discussion today is there's a lot of different pathways in ways that we can go up, and then some people are gonna go into different level roles that will eventually support all of this.
And I want to tag along to something Jeff said as well. And while we do need to look at the career side, we also need to look at the non-career side, like the officials and things like that, and the coaches, that we need those people as well, where it's not always a career path, but they're integral to running an event or, hosting a tournament or whatever it may be. If you don't have enough officials in the state to handle a large scale tournament, you can't run a large scale tournament.
Right.
Yeah, I'd reinforce that in our experience exactly. Of course, Matt knows, but that these days people are asking, do you have enough officials to run a bigger, when a sports property is choosing where to go? And if you can prove that you've got that covered, because people do not want to find out after the fact they're going to influence the schedule or the capacity to deliver based on officials, which is a reality for everybody. So really strong that if we can just tie it in from the get-go, great.
Yeah, to give a good example, the Bethesda soccer tournament that happens in November, they will bring in officials from Florida, Ohio. We have officials coming from Europe. So we have to import officials in order to make that tournament happen.
Yeah, I think
Does that, you or them? Tournament director, okay.
I'm just gonna put one more plug in for the broad, because one of the things we don't talk about is the commercial side of the industry as well. So not just officials, but the people, like to Darren's mention about the conference that's happening in Atlanta. They're selling bleachers, they're selling the trash cans that go outside of the facility. And so I do think, but for a person to, really see that, wow, that they're connected to this larger piece, and that they could come up and learn what Pythium looks like under a microscope so they could keep the grass green. Just so many aspects of it to make it run.
So taking all that and all this discussion we've just had, what do we think the deliverable looks like from a sports tourism task force? Is it just kind of highlighting all this and all the different pathways and needs? I mean, what do we think is the delivery piece that we do as a task force to satisfy?
I think, do we have the education to back it up? Like, can we teach people at all levels? So whether it's entry level, like your institute that you offered, or whether it's a career pathway, is it not so vague like at Montgomery College? Is there a, you know, I know we don't want to lump it together, but like a, you know, a sports tourism management that's attracting students to go to Montgomery College and then get some of these jobs, and that they could see it as a viable path should they choose to do so, that line up with a lot of the bigger universities that are offering it. So do people know about it? And is there an educational pathway? Now, I think what this committee could do is suggest some recommendations. So the recommendations could be, hey, Montgomery College, look at a curriculum that aligns with this industry. And that would be a very strong recommendation, because they don't offer one currently. They offer subsets of it for sure, like, but do they offer something that really highlights this industry as a viable career path? And we need it. And even within the broad brush of all of the jobs available now, I mean, I think we would find out that there's, you know, lots of opportunities, whether it's the guy who's selling the turf that goes on the field of the facility that we're going to build, or the, you know, the groundskeeper, or the commercial hospitality person that's making all the reservations.
So,
Terry,
Yep. So,
wait, Susan, hold on one second.
Terry, can you talk about the Propel program that you guys helped fund?
Yes, so we are in working with the HBCUs primarily in the state of Maryland, and we created an apprenticeship program in concert with those institutions about making people who are juniors and seniors in college career ready to come out of college in the sports tourism industry, leveraging a relationship with Sports ETA, which Matt serves on the board of, as a place of continuing education towards a more specified channel of expertise in the sports tourism industry. And that program is, you know, got its first set of apprenticeships on board right now. And this fall, we'll be bringing in a full swath of anywhere from 4 to 6 apprentices in this industry through our HBCU partnership.
Thank you.
And that's a sports tourism, is that a sports tourism program that there's?
Yeah, it's sports tourism specific, and it's an apprenticeship through Maryland Sports. It's a program called Propel that we've worked with our consultants on to launch. We initially helped launch the program about 10 years ago when it was the National Association of Sports Commissions. However, during time and other things, we brought it back to life in Maryland as a statewide HBCU driven initiative.
Got it. So going back to kind of that delivery piece, and that is it seems like we can maybe create at least a list of everything that's kind of out there now, and then use, like you said, is to develop maybe an opportunity of different things. Like one of the things I'm thinking about is you're doing TurfCast programs for your workforce. I'm doing them for my workforce, you know, and Darren's doing them for his workforce. Is that something that maybe Susan was throwing out there, that maybe once a year there's a program that we work with Montgomery College and talk about, you know, hey, maybe this is a program in a way you guys can help us out in our industry and bringing our teams together and talking about best practice. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm just kind of trying to brainstorm some of the different ideas and trying to identify, hey, here's some opportunities that might be out there.
yeah, that's certainly an excellent suggestion. I think one of the other things we need to think about, though, is what are the jobs today? What does the data say the jobs are today? What's in the marketplace today? And sort of what's the landscape, and where are the jobs, and what kind of preparation does a job need? Is it a high school diploma? Is it an AA degree? Is it a baccalaureate degree? Is it something beyond that? And sort of get the lay of the land there. Then are there jobs where maybe we say you need a baccalaureate degree, but when you really unpack it, you don't. So then maybe that gets more people into the pathway a little sooner if the credentials are a little bit different. Then how do we look to the future and sort of think about what would the jobs to tomorrow be? And again, what kind of credentials do they need? And with that information, I think we can better, we could all better think about how to, get MC, universities of Shady Grove, aligned with these kind of workforce goals, right? Because right now, what we hear is IT, cyber, teaching, nursing, right? So, and we do that based off of, Lightcast data. So how can we look at some Lightcast data and others to sort of see where the jobs today and where they're going to be in the future? And then that would determine whether we do this sort of annual thing across departments and agencies for landscape folks, or is it something that we add permanently to the curriculum that's open enrollment and you try to drive students into those programs because there's great career opportunities, right? So it's sort of from one end of the spectrum to the other on the response, right? And I don't know how you train enough referees for an event that happens once a year and you need that many referees, and how you make sure you have them in county, so to speak, but it's something we should wrestle with and think that through a bit more too.
No, I think that this really interesting discussion, it's a great point. The one thing I was reacting to what Susan was saying was this idea of doing like the analysis of data to really, refine this. I think that it's going to be very difficult to do that, right? Because the data is sort of limited in terms of how you can break it up, but also like, is it really necessary to be sort of objective, exploratory, and just see what the data tells you? Because it's hard enough to do that. Whereas a lot of you already have strong ideas about things that you want. Maybe it's not cohesive together because somebody's talking about refereeing, turf management. Those are not the same. They're all part of the same ecosystem, but they're not the same topic. What if with everybody within their own expertise regarding the document were to basically generate their own suggestions and, provide a justification, whether that's your own data, whether that's your own needs and gaps that you've observed from your place. And then that list comes together and it's refined as part of this work group. And then there's an actionable set of recommendations from across all the various different topics that are sort of not necessarily interrelated, but all tied back to the sports tourism industry. I'm just saying, like, rather than saying we will explore and just come back and sift through what we find, to the extent that people have preconceived notions about what's necessary and helpful, write those down, start making that case with the information that you have, and then refine that. And then you have a list of things for the council to weigh in on.
Well, and I think you're bringing up the good point, which is what, as we've been talking about everything here, is kind of where's the starting point, right? We need a starting point to kind of get. And going along to that point of, I think that's one way to go is to say, hey, everybody in the room kind of write down what are your needs and what do you specifically have? And then why do you have it? And then we can throw that all up on the wall and start seeing and creating this. It'll give us something to start with. But the other question to Susan's point and to your point, Bilal, is just, is there anything from the state level? Terry, has been anything that's out there that kind of identifies the current jobs and current needs, or even just current jobs, like Susan was? Is there anything out there from the state level? No.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, obviously, through our Team Maryland partnership and others, we've identified some of the shortcomings within the industry. Matt alluded to one, obviously athletic trainers, unique challenge, finding officials in today's youth and amateur sports market that are willing to take on not only officiating, but also some of the current parental abuse that's out there in the marketplace, and then tackling those issues and, those type of things. But that's kind of like Bilal was saying, that's kind of some of the stuff we've been kicking around from an industry perspective, but we've never, locked it down or anything from the state that says this is what we're missing.
So what is everybody's thoughts on, to that point, Terry, if we haven't done it, is if we all kind of take our segment and put down what the needs are and kind of come back together and say, okay, here's all the needs, walk through them, and maybe we start framing something out.
Yeah, I think if we list all the jobs we need, we can probably bundle a bunch of them together and say the education is the same for this and same for this. And then once we figure out those pools, we can figure out what the best path is to fix that segment. But we're never gonna get it all, that's for sure.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think, you know, we gotta just do the best we can do.
It's a starting point.
It's a starting point.
And I think we
Gives
need,
us something to put
Something
up
to
and
build
start
on.
looking
we
at.
probably need to prioritize them too, like
Yeah.
these are the most urgent needs that we have.
The data might actually suggest something's more of a priority than you know, it's like, oh, there's a huge gap here, but it's like, we don't actually need that many based on our experience, right? So like, it's better to just go up.
I think to your point, then going back to like somebody who got a degree like from George Mason in sports, recreation, tourism, like they offer bachelor's degrees in sports management, recreation management, tourism and events management. I'm taking anybody that's got any one of those degrees and for my career jobs. And my career jobs require at a minimum a 2-year degree with work, bachelor of science degree preferred. And so I think it's gonna be, now, do I have seasonals? Yeah, it's like 23 or 400 seasonals that work for us here in the county. And that's not to include all the officials and other contractors that we hire. But so in the pathway of the work, like I think, you know, kind of to Tom's point, you could choose the specific tourism pathway within this broader umbrella. And I think for me, I go back to this point and go, if we were to recommend, instead of just saying like, we certainly need to say, here are all the jobs, but if we could take somebody from that has sort of related experience in education in the area, we're gonna take them and we're gonna train them up. So, I mean, I think we can list all the jobs, but I think one of the things that we could certainly do is research some of the universities that have that offering already and go look at George Mason and Clemson and NC State and sort of combine it and go, what do we not have here that they have in Virginia and they have all over North Carolina and they have in other places, but we're not offering here locally in Maryland. Because the jobs are, now granted, we want them to stay in Montgomery County, but a young person who graduates locally, they got lots of options in the area, everything from the Commanders to the Ravens, to the Bowie Bay Sox, to the Frederick Keys, to the local park and rec community aspect of it, to the you know, soccer complexes, to SoFi and a lot of the you know, local private sector, to the companies, to Musco Lighting. You know, I could start naming all the companies that operate in this area. There are a ton of opportunities, I would say, in this field. So I would concentrate on what, you know, what do some of these other states have in terms of education that we don't have?
I agree with, you know, if we get a list, to your point, I think it's, one component is the list of what we need. The other component is the list of what's out there, education wise, and, you know, maybe something that
Yeah.
cross-referenced as identifying, like Susan said, you're gonna identify the need, what's the jobs that are out there? And you're kind of answering that question as well. Here's all the different career paths, right? And why are they successful? Susan, is there anything in the education world and in the university world that like is a resource that we can plug in, sports tourism degree programs, and you just generate a list, or is that something that we've got to search independently?
Let me check with my colleagues. I have a vague recollection of our friends in Northwest Maryland, both the community college up there, Garrett Community College and Frostburg State, partnering on programs like this because that's what's important to them in the Northwest part of the state, attracting people to come and, you know, enjoy the Western Maryland mountains, lakes, etc. Right? And trying to generate that kind of tourism for there. So I have a vague recollection of that program. I don't hear our friends talking about recruiting anybody from the University of Maryland. I know University of West Virginia has a wide array of programs. And you know, Maryland.
What about the Mount? The Mount has a sports management program.
Right. So it also depends, you know, like sports management is a little more specific than sports tourism, right? And again, it's like, what job are you trying to connect people to with that degree, right? And we're very clear about the programs we offer there have to be jobs to be a program that we offer. That's why I'm like, you know, the data. So let me talk to my colleagues who are more versed in this than I am, the academic folks, to get clear on, you know, what we offer, and then ask them if they have advice on, you know, what else might be out there. Obviously, we do a lot of transfer work. The majority of our students come to MC and then they're transferring. So our transfer coordinator probably has a good sense of what's available at the other 4 years. So let me check in with her as well. Again, if we're talking about, you know, I don't know how many jobs the Department of Recreation needs that would require, you know, the sports tourism baccalaureate degree, right? And then are there other agencies or departments that could put a person with that degree to work, right? So I think we got to have some sense, even if it's as we're talking anecdotally based on our own workforce, and, you know, how many positions you fill annually, what's your turnover or something, so that we have some kind of target to aim for, right? And understand what it means, right? So does it mean we have better partnerships with the 4 years in the region? Does it mean MC needs to develop some new programs that would in fact transfer? And again, or does it mean we do some kind of contract training where we can help people gain entry, either improve their skills while they're working in your departments or agencies so that they can move up in a career pathway, or do their job better, and or if we're talking about 20 to 30 jobs every 2 to 3 years, how do we fill that? That's such a small number. It's crucial to your agency without a doubt, but it's a small number to build programs around, really. So
Yeah.
that's what
I think industry-wide is what we need to look at, because, you know, I know I'm talking from recreation, but just in Montgomery County, you have Montgomery County Recreation, City of Rockville, Parks and Recreation,
good point.
Market Planning, Gaithersburg, Montgomery Village, Tacoma, City of Tacoma Park. So it's a lot of jobs just in the county. So we could certainly try to pull some of that. Maybe the state association, to Darren's point, can help, and maybe
That's a great
NRA
idea.
has some data. Yeah.
Great idea. That's a good point.
I'd also say that let's be clear, are we trying to give jobs to people in career paths from the county, or are we trying to fill within the county key functions that we want to get the best people anywhere? As an example, we haven't mentioned, because I get the sense of who we all are in Montgomery County, Maryland in particular, but Georgetown, AU, GW, Maryland, University of Maryland, all have sports management programs. We get dozens of resumes every quarter. We do have an intern program. There's a lot of those people looking for opportunities. And one of the challenges we have in the sports industry is all these kids going to grad school or undergrad. They want to work for the, they want to be the vice president of marketing for the Capitals. And they got to start off as being, we all know this in our industry. You got to go to work as on the ticketing side or the sponsorship side, where you're rolling out the clown at the halftime show. And we try to explain to people all the time, boy, there's such a bigger world of a career opportunity in youth sports, in finance or engineering or design or supply chain in my world, but also in events that aren't the ones that you see. But so my point is, if we are looking for people who are coming out of established programs locally, but they're not in Montgomery County, there's a pretty significant group of people. There's 2 conferences that happen every year, and one run by used to be Georgetown, and then the guy went over to run the AU program. He runs this big conference of coming out of sports management programs, and then the one in GW, it's called the SYNC program. They stand for something, I forget. But we send people every year to speak at them, and they get really quality people. Montgomery County might want to send somebody down to either get on a panel or to recruit or whatever. But to Susan's point, we got to know what the jobs are. But there are a lot of people in the DMV looking for jobs coming out, well-trained, looking for entry-level and somewhat more jobs coming out of programs that are focused on sports.
Yeah, so I would say that it's not an either or, right? If we need to if we're going to grow this industry sector, so to speak, we do want well-qualified, ready-to-go talent, right? And so it's not homegrown talent versus imported labor. It's both, right? And I would like to think we would want to focus on the homegrown talent so that we're giving our own residents the opportunity, but we need to fill the jobs, right? So we should have a both and strategy for the long term, in my view.
Well, I mean,
So if I could, Matt, one second, if I could, just as we're framing this let's just remember, we're trying to discuss everything that's gotta be thrown on the table and we gotta start navigating these areas. I think these are all good discussion points. Tom, I just wanted to hit back on one thing that you said and kind of, because I think you highlighted it, I wanted to reinforce it is that, remember, it's our task is about developing the workforce needed to support sports tourism as we're trying to grow that in the county. So, you know, in the frame of this, bringing it all back around, it's got to be coming back to what is, and to Susan's point, there's a lot of different avenues, a lot of different ways to do that. There's a lot of qualified people out there. But in the end, if we're going to run sports tourism in the county, what is needed for that? And then, you know, so Matt.
two things to Susan's comment, whether we focus on people that live here now or outside. If we focus, I don't think we need to really worry about it because we bring somebody from outside, they become a county resident.
Yeah.
Like if they're gonna work here, they're probably gonna live here. But to go back to Tom's thing about the local schools, there are some schools that have really good sports management programs, but in the last 20 years, everyone has added a sports management program. So I think we just need to be careful about what school we're looking at.
Yeah.
So like schools that started at Clemson's, the NC State's really good on the recreational side. I'm a graduate of the Georgetown program, and I will tell you, it is really great if you want to work in college or pros, but it is garbage if you want to work and do what I do. Like they're not teaching you how to work in youth athletics. It's one of my complaints with them, and I've talked with them about it. They just don't have a program ready for it. So, you know, Tom's right. People want to come out and make $100 grand a year to be the VP of marketing somewhere. And it's just that's not the jobs that we need here. We don't have pro teams here. We don't even have any college teams here. So we need to look at the programs that would make sense for the jobs we're looking for.
Correct. And I think that might, as we navigate all of this and pull it all together and it gets down to, it might be, hey, these are, as Tom said, these are the conferences we want to send somebody to, and this is where you want to try and recruit from. And these are the conferences and that are important and would benefit us, right? And to help identify that so that as organizations are trying to run, we're giving them a tool base to understand what to do and doing that. Okay. So as a takeaway on that, if I could, I guess the homework assignment is kind of everybody kind of thinking about their needs. I think we also identified kind of talking about the educational pieces that are available right now. And, you know, and really kind of beyond our own needs, what is that scope of work? What is that database of jobs that are local and regional that have needs? And we were talking about the city of Tacoma Park, city of Rockville, not only the county's Department of Rec and things of that nature. So just kind of any of those thoughts and anything that you can think of and just write down, it's kind of, we need a starting point and then we'll start navigating it from there. Does that make sense? Okay. Anything else on that before we kind of, the other piece I wanted to hit on today was, you know, the task force was assigned with the potential economic and community impacts of attracting and recruiting a sports franchise to the county. That's another thing that's on our task force, and I kind of just wanted to throw that out there for a conversation piece on how to approach that one.
And I can add a little bit of context to this one. Specifically, you'll recall from the discussion that Councilmember Albornoz had raised the prospect of attracting a professional rugby team. And obviously, we've talked a little bit about the cricket.
So we already have a rugby team.
But it's
Yeah, we
like
got
a
that, right?
facility for them.
It's a separate facility for that?
Yeah.
No, we're keeping them.
Well, Matt, I got approached by a different council member a couple of weeks ago about a women's professional rugby team in Montgomery County. I thought to myself, we already had a rugby team, and then they ended up at Audi. But anyway, one of the council members did say, "What about a women's professional rugby team in Montgomery County, that seems like that would fit, but I don't know if she had any commitment to it or just thought it was a cool idea.
So do we have a list of the professional teams that are in the county now? I know, I didn't realize, you got the rugby team and the soccer team.
Yeah. The soccer team's marginal professional.
Okay,
That's it.
that's it. Is there, you know, and so if you're, Tom, if you're getting approached, you know, in regards to this, I guess that goes around this conversation. What do we look at here? You know, what's the economics behind it? What's the recommendation? Is the idea that we present to them, you know, this is the next kind of professional team we should try and go after? I'm kind of throwing that out there because I don't have an answer.
My personal opinion, it's a really waste of time and money.
Okay,
We're not we'll get the rugby teams of the world and the low division soccer teams. We're not gonna get a major 4, or now major 5 sports team. DC's too close to us. They're gonna go to DC. I mean, you look at the Commanders, which are potentially trying to get out of Prince George, kind of go back to DC. I just think it'd be a waste of resources to try and pursue something like that. That's just not realistic.
What about some of the more, I'm going to use the phrase because I don't really have the vocabulary here, but the more amateur teams like the Silver Spring Tacoma Thunderbolts and Big Train, they're baseball operations, right?
They're not professional, yeah. I mean, they're
Right.
amateur.
They are. These are college wooden bat leagues taking collegiate baseball players and hopefully earning their pathway up to the MLB, right? And there's several teams in the county. They generate energy and enthusiasm, and commerce, right, of a kind. I wonder if we should be thinking about those or plugging them in. I mean, they need athletic trainers, they need referees, they need, they have needs too, right? And they need use of fields. So I'm wondering if that's something that's worth thinking about and leaning into in the overarching vein of sports tourism and how you go about promoting that. I mean, the Cape Cod Baseball League is a wooden bat league. It's one of the premier leagues in that space. And let me tell you, it's a thing to go to a Cape Cod Baseball League game. It's part of the specialness of going to Cape Cod, right? For the summer when you go hang out there, go to the beach, and then you go to a ball game. So.
Just to say just briefly that we did look into this, when we had that briefing back in February a little bit to understand whether that was a model of, whether it's that scale of baseball or, amateur or semi-pro lacrosse or something. But we spoke with people that manage Povich through the connection that Darren had, and they require a lot of sort of private foundational support, and their concessions are just sort of like more or less what keeps them going. It's not a huge economic driver per se. It seems like the scale just doesn't have that potential, but I don't know. That was just something that came up.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you an idea, so the 2 teams that play with us, the Bobcats on a good game are gonna draw 500 people, like not a lot. The rugby draws between, we'll call it 2,000 people. But they're not generating overnight stays. They're coming for a game and going home. So they're not, it's not like a NFL game where people are gonna come for the weekend, or baseball where they're gonna catch 3 games in a weekend or something like that. Like these pro and the high level amateur sports, it's not a real tourism driver. It's a marginal economic gain from them, if at all.
They're day visitors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they're just locals going to a game.
Sure, but I
Players local?
No, for like the baseball, they're not always. A lot of, if they go to Maryland, they may stay in the area and play while they're here. But again, you're talking
Yeah.
20
It's a
people.
very small amount, if any, overnighters, like family members.
do we circle back to this based on what ultimately becomes the recommended facility? And then understand what that is, and then see if there's an opportunity based on that facility to attract something?
I think that makes the most sense.
or, it's the baseball teams are not all that now for sure, right? But if they become part of come to Montgomery County, go do this and catch a game, right? I wonder if it's just part of listing assets that we have, and then thinking about, do we leverage them or not leverage them, right? Or how can we leverage them in the future as part of an overall strategy?
So Susan, that kind of gets into the last topic, which we'll get into at our next meeting, which is kind of marketing around all of this.
Right.
And
Okay.
I think maybe you're kind of hitting on that end of it, is maybe just taking that and making it part of the marketing plan on just our overall sports and stuff of that nature, and maybe that's where that comes in.
And I wonder if it's maybe within like tying this to that as you're suggesting, but I remember Terry also referencing that like some of the other assets, not quite professional sports franchises, but having, country clubs that host PGA events, having bicycle events. Is there a way to cultivate?
Yeah.
The connection to Montgomery County there. People think they're coming to the DC, but they're not. So is there a potential there and a way to think about both marketing and making sure those professional entities are aware that they're in?
Yeah. Let's be clear. If we were in a more rural jurisdiction that wasn't surrounded by, the Nats and the O's, and then the O's single A teams, or their minor league teams, and then all the other sports teams we have around here, we'd probably be a little more enthusiastic about these amateur leagues and trying to leverage them to build our economic development, build our community. So I think we should think about that in that kind of way, because we're sitting here, we can't attract another major sports team to the region, but what do we have and how do we leverage that? And
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's all about the competition and the relative other choices. Cape Cod League there's no other professional league, and it has a cultural connection. It lends itself to the kind of the summer cadence, and it also has a tradition of some significance, but it simply doesn't have any competition in that regard. I would say it does lend
Red Sox are only an hour away. The Red Sox are only an hour away, but
but people don't want to go over that bridge, so you already did that one. So, but either way, I think the basic idea is that there's a lot of higher quality competition, and people, like minor league baseball. But if it's a choice between easy access to both or the same, there's going to be a price difference. People are going to pick the higher one. That's just the way it works. I would say, though, back to the an hour ago, if we identified something as a differentiator that would be something we could fit the spot, that's kind of sweet spot, like cricket, for example. I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, but we could become like the cricket place from a lot of people would come from all over the place if that were like somehow Montgomery County put its stake in the ground, the way Naples, Florida put its stake in the ground with pickleball. And people started, pickleball, it's a little goofy thing for a bunch of old people. Now they've got two of the biggest tournaments in the world that are massive economic players. I'm not suggesting we could do that, but if we put our stake in the ground for something that differentiated us, the benefit is we have all these resources. We have a huge number of people for whom a drive is very accessible, et cetera. All those things we know drives economic engine.
Right. To that point, from a marketing standpoint, there's so many events that come to the county that our team at Visit Montgomery either book or they don't book. So, for those events that don't necessarily come through us in the initial sales phase, I encourage all of those planners to share that information with us, because we can track that. We can provide the outreach to the operator, to the event organizer, provide them with the resources about the county, market the event, track hotel nights that could potentially book through our site through Ripe, and provide and also collect the data that way. So, Visit Montgomery is a huge resource for events that are even booked direct through, different venues around the county. So definitely use this as a resource.
And I think we can't have a marketing discussion without talking about some type of grant program. We are an outlier.
Yeah.
Like when I was on the event operator side, that was the first question I asked when I went to a destination. What kind of grant program you have to help offset costs to come in? Now through Terry's office, we have $1 million in the state, but that $1 million doesn't stretch real far when you're talking about 24 jurisdictions. So when I go to him and say, hey, I'm trying to bring this event, what can you give me? That number's gonna vary every year from maybe $1,000 to, I think the cap is what, 75,000 for a massive event. But it like, I can go take an event to Richmond, they're gonna cover my entire field cost for me. And we're not competitive right now. And I did a quick one while I was sitting here. Every Northern Virginia jurisdiction has a grant program.
Right.
So we're competing against Loudoun, Fairfax, Arlington, Alexandria, all those places, and they're dishing out money to bring an event there. And I can't offer them anything.
So I
We
think,
have a strong.
yeah, I was just gonna say, I just want to be careful. We weren't gonna go too deep into marketing because that's another lengthy discussion, just like we had. I know we're running out of time. So, we are getting to the marketing discussion. It's another piece on our task, another task that we have to complete. So we are definitely gonna bring that up and bring all that up into a bigger discussion. So, all right, so on just wrapping up the professional franchise, are we in agreement that it's not worth a heavy look? More so, I think 2 points that I kind of got out of that conversation, just to frame it, was number one, let's see what the facility is that is ultimately recommended, and then see if there is something that comes out of that facility that we could maybe take a look at going after. And the other piece, which I think Tom brought it up, was, the only outlier on that is kind of the cricket. Right, is what is there, and do you put your stake in the ground and that whole thing? And and the reason why I raise that is because we still have the ongoing conversation with the cricket. So let's see where that kind of goes on its own, and see what develops in that area as well.
I mean, I think we just gotta be careful that that's what's popular now,
Right.
but like next year with, Olympics coming in 26, maybe there's a professional flag football league that starts up.
I know.
Like a legitimate one. There's a bunch that claim they are now, but like a legitimate one.
Yeah.
So just keep an eye out for those things that then we can latch onto them early and become the Cape Cod Baseball League.
Yeah.
We're now the flag football league. That's where people come during, the fall every year for that.
And the only reason why I brought up cricket is just because there is this ongoing discussion right now at the state level, right? So kind of monitoring that, but I think, I know that's the challenge, right? It's all the land. But I think you just raised another great point is, flag football just went in all the high schools. It's a varsity sport this year and it's growing and we know the NFL's putting a ton of money at it. What ultimately ends up coming out of that. So I think it's kind of just monitoring and seeing what's happening over the next couple of months. And as we kind of take that, but to your point, Matt, it's not putting a lot of resources at that. So anything else on the sports franchise? Otherwise, we're gonna kind of move on to new business, see if there's any new business. Any new business? Anybody have anything else? In regards to that? Otherwise, I think we scheduled to meet second week in
Yep, let's figure out
In
the
November?
date exactly.
November.
Yep, the second Wednesday in November is the 13th of November.
Okay,
I have an old business question.
yeah, sure.
I had written down my homework assignment from last meeting was to start gathering data on field inventory, permitting, and demand. I've started to do that. Hadn't heard any word about it today, so just wanted to check in on given the change to the
Good point.
yeah. So just
Actually, very important that you raise that, and I made the note, but I don't have the document in front of me. So in fact, that was something that I meant to bring up earlier. If literally by the end of this week or next week, everybody can send any information they would like the consultant to review as part of their study, just send that, I'll compile it, and we'll just give it all to them. If you've commissioned studies, if you've collected data, if you have descriptions of programs that you run or offer that are all relevant for them to consider as they begin to analyze gaps in the market, let me know, because I'm going to list them in the scope of work that goes out to these consultants, and hopefully they can respond and sort of say, this is how we'll consider these, and start, reviewing it as part of the response they give us. So just, if you could send that as soon as you can, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the reminder, Darren.
Thanks, Darren.
just to clarify, are you planning on sharing it with folks prior to securing somebody on contract?
So I mean, we would That would be ideal, I think, so that they can come up with a more concrete proposal based on facts as opposed to just something that they're guessing about. But if there's something you're not comfortable with and you have different versions that you'd like to include in the task order versus something you provide later, we can separate those things out with whatever sensitivity. So if there's like something that's more high level that you'd like to include that goes out to the public in a scope of work, send that. And if there's like, embargo this until we get the consultant, well, we can do that also.
Just to clarify, everything I have is public record. It's all public data. It's just a question of readiness for deep analysis versus a superficial. There may be inconsistencies across different data sets, and so I just wanted to.
And we can
Make
also
that clear.
caveat that, just so this
Yeah.
is the background, and we'll provide you with, precise data later, but we want you to be aware of this as you prepare your, response to our scope.
Okay, I think that would be helpful.
Great. Anything else? We brought up today? Otherwise, I think we are good to go. We'll adjourn the meeting, and thanks, everyone. Appreciate the conversation and everything today. Talk to you next month.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will not be here. It's for TCA conference,
Okay.
Anywhere fun?
Chattanooga.
That fun?
I've actually never been to Chattanooga.
All right. There you go.
I think it's still there right now.
Sure.
As long as it's not Florida, as long as you're not going anything in Florida.
The neighbor's in Sarasota right now. It's like.
I just
Yeah.
got the breaking news about, so that the Post just closing in on Florida.
Still in a category 5.
Yep,
It's, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be
Oh, yes, there
devastating.
it is.
breaking news, well, it's a Post for me.
We were all in Anaheim for the teams conference, and half of us